Hello, good evening and welcome ladies and gentlemen to another week of Fast and Furious racing action in the iRacing official GTE Sprint Series Season 2, of course, for 2025, and being brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing. For week 2 of 12, we've made our way for the Belgian circuit, the Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps, where we had an absolutely thrilling season opener, no doubt about it, to the United States of America and to the US state of Florida for the one and only circuit wonderfully coined by Takanobu Mitsuyoshi, and I'm going to do my best musical impression possible of Daytona International Speedway, ladies and gentlemen. And if my singing hasn't burst your eardrums, that's right, we're here for the wonderful road course of the USA, and what a circuit we've got in store. Consists of 75% of the circuit's oval and bringing together a marrying of hairpins and sweepers as well, not to forget about its wonderful the back straight bus stop chicane. Is a circuit like no other when it comes to circuit compromises, in the fact that you need to be fast in the infield, but to do so you need to have a little bit of rear wing. However, if you want to maximise your top speed on the banking, you need to go with the lowest possible rear wing and instead set up the car for stability under braking through making changes to the suspension and other aspects rather than applying downforce. Those who are able to carry the maximum possible speed around the circuit could be victorious. Meanwhile, those who perhaps are not able to carry that momentum, they may find themselves languishing behind and off of the podium, and indeed outside the top 5. But as we set and get ready to go today, we welcome you all to this live broadcast from circuit side, available only on YouTube at youtube.com, and search for TX1 TX Alternative Paul Walsh, and welcome to you guys and girls tuning on in. And well, don't be shy, feel free to say hi if you so desire. We're very happy to have you with us. And well, as we do get ready to go underway today, in the commentary booth you have myself. My name is Paul Walsh, also known as TX1 depending on media you follow me on, and all of your racing action is going to be brought today in what will be our one and only race from this 1900 Greenwich Mean Time, that's GMT or Universal Coordinate Time UTC slot, the top split slot of course, as per usual, and we'll be getting underway with our 45-minute race in just under 3 minutes time. But without further ado, there's the race information in terms of our schedule. But what about our season so far and what we've still got lying in wait? And as we can see, after starting in Belgium last time out, today is the Friday, the 28th of March 2025, and we are here in the US of A for the Daytona International Speedway. We're going to be making multiple visits to the US of A later on this season, but this is the first of many visits, and after today, we've got quite the trip around the world, including going across the Pacific to Suzuka in a week's time, and more on that later on in today's broadcast. But there is your 12-week schedule, and coming on to our circuit then, where's of course the circuit located near Daytona Beach in the Volusia County of Florida in the US of A, and thank you to iRacing.com for their brilliant track maps, and with it of course the wonderful simulator that iRacing provides. 12 corners, of which we do see over 75% of the oval banking, and incredibly long mileage, no doubt about it. And the infield consists of turns 1 through to 7, and you do have the bus stop chicane of turns 9 through to 11 that has been revised over the course of years with the raising and lowering of its apex curves, and also the changing of the style of chicane into what is the asymmetrical chicane that you see today, but which our drivers will be able to come away victorious here in 9. They've got to carry as much speed as possible around the oval in order to lead the way to the checker flag. Well, before we could go racing, a quick reminder of the rules. And as we can see, this is an open setup series with fuel loads restricted to 50%, and that means our drivers will need to take a pit stop at some point over the race distance in order to be able to get to the end unscathed on fuel capacity, and it will only be fuel they'll be putting in the cars. In terms of the race, the grid shall be set via a closed qualifying session, which is currently underway, albeit behind the scenes, and the race shall commence via a rolling start, as is a tradition of the GTE Sprint Series. Drivers shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 16 or more instant points, and if they go up to 25, they'll be immediately disqualified from the race, and they will not be seeing that checker flag. We hope not to see that at all. Instead, what we hope to see is absolutely brilliant racing, and as we make our way back to circuit side, there is plenty to come, as we do hear the wonderful roar there, the sonorous roar of Jordan Chamberlain's Porsche 911 RSR, and as he makes his way on around there on the low line, trying to cut as much as possible to shorten that run. Well, my goodness, it is a very, very foggy day here at Daytona as he calls his qualifying session to an end. Indeed, our drivers only getting what is the best part of 2 flying laps, I do believe, and most of them haven't already completed those 2 flying laps, but one driver is yet to get a lap on the board, and he's saving it all to the final lap. He's going to give it everything, is none other than Todd Allier, as he makes his way on around here and rolling his way on through what is the second of the infield hairpins, and as he comes up through the right hander, we do say hello in the YouTube chat there to Sir Bottle Job, and if you're wondering what's going on there with regards to posting many messages with different formats of what is the letterings of GTE, well, I'm running a little bit of testing for other broadcasters to do with regards to using what is a giveaway bot. We're not going to be doing any giveaway giveaways on the Top Split broadcast any day soon, unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, but he's just doing some testing there for me, and therefore, if you don't mind, if you are tuning in right now and you don't have what is too much going on right now, if you could possibly type in just the letters GTE all together in the YouTube chat as a single message, then that would be absolutely appreciated, so I can just test a bit of technology in the background. But still, testing aside, and right now, testing the patience of Todd Allier and the fact that the Porsche driver had an absolutely dismal day at what was the Circuit de Spa Francorchamps a week ago, in the fact that his race really came to an end before it even cleared the opening corner of that major incident collecting multiple drivers. What can Allier do today as he makes his way across the line and as he roars his way in towards what is turn number 1, where he won't be coming to a stop there. In fact, it's Todd Allier as he comes in there and under the braking. And where it is going to be, in the end, what is a, oh goodness me, a 1 minute 40.952, and well, not the lap he necessarily wanted, but then again, we've got a long distance to go in terms of what is the race. Qualifying is only going to be one part of it, but the fastest driver out there is none other than Jose Manuel Cazon, and well, he is the best part of 1.5 tenths faster than Sabit Verhebovic, and it looks as though it's going to be close. It is a primarily Porsche field here today with 22 drivers in this 3,280 iRacing strength of field, a very high iRacing, only one split this time of day, intriguingly enough, so therefore it does look as though for our drivers it is all going to be about what is this one split and trying to do everything. But as they make the way on around, and we have here a new debutant in the top split, and that is Thibaut Bracanier, and as he comes towards the line, what's he going to be able to achieve? Is he leaving it very late? Did he get that lap in right at the close? He just about squeezes it in, I think, although no, he doesn't. It doesn't count, and that is going to be qualifying complete, ladies and gentlemen. And well, let's head to the grid for our race then, as all the drivers will get themselves into position on the grid. And this is how they're going to line up for what will be our top split broadcast of the week 2, season 2, 2025 GTE Sprint Series race in the 1900 GMT or UTC slot. And as we can see there, it is going to be none other than Jose Manuel Cazon, who takes pole position, the Spaniard, ahead of Sabit Verhebovic, who lines up in P2, 1.5 tenths between the two of them. And then we come on to what was P3 there for Giovanni Lopez, followed up by fellow countryman from Spain, and that's Balta Fernandez, who starts P4 today. Jordan Shamblin, the American driver, starts P5, ahead of none other than the Iberian of what is there, Carlos Hurtado, who making his debut in this top split broadcast series as of today, and good luck to him. We then do have from Japan none other than Yunya Honma, who starts P7, and then it will be Roberto Farina starting P8 today. And completing your top 10 will be following on Antonio Montero, the first of what is the Corvette. And keep in mind the Honma is in what is a Ford GT. We've got a very rare number of cars outside of the Porsche contingent. And then it will be starting P10 Joaquin Martins, who complete your top 10 starters. Outside the top 10, let's not forget about starting P11 best of the rest is our driver there, Sebastian Lotz. And we also have alongside him starting P12 Angel Manuel Montoro. And then we have on row number 7 Todd Allier, ahead of newcomer Ricardo Agudo, and then we have on row number 8 the combination of Matthias Matthew Siegel, who was contemplating going into this week potentially switching away from the Ferraris, but he's decided to stay with his mainstay, and I'm very happy to see that, no doubt about it. The 488 GTE is being represented, and he's joined in the company there of Jonathan Palfreman, and these two have had some battles in the past seasons, and therefore we expect plenty more today. And starting P17 is Pavel Poluk, and he'll be joined by none other than Wanyu Tarul. And then we do have completing your top 20 on row number 10, starting P19, is Joris Peters Wim, and the Dutchman being followed up there by Cedric Boissier, the Ford GT driver. Now on our final row of the grid, let's not forget about them. They're starting P21 and P22 respectively, will be Nick O'Neill in the BMW M8, the only BMW here today. And then we do have Thibaut Bracanier starting at P22. But with the mist not lifting at the moment, indeed it is a dismal day at circuit side, but it's not a dismal day for racing in our hearts, I can tell you that, ladies and gentlemen. Well, as our drivers now start to make the way on around, it is all going to be about making their way up speed as soon as possible. It will be a partial formation lap, and we can see Jose Manuel Cazon making his way up to a little bit of pace now behind that safety car. But further down the order, well, do we have an opportunity here for Honma today to potentially run rampant for his rivals? We'll have to wait and see as he gets himself set and ready to go. It's a long way round on the turn 12 banking. It'll feel like an eternity, but when that pace car pulls it in, it will be to Manuel Cazon to dictate exactly when we will be going green flag racing. And will he leave it late? Will he leave it early? Of course, everyone will predict he'll leave it as late as possible to make the run down towards turn 1 as short as humanly possible, but then again he might spring a surprise and decide to go absolutely as early as possible. And a good point there from Sir Bottlejob in the YouTube chat being we do have over 80% of what is our drivers there running the Porsche 911 RSR. The car has proven very popular here, but could we see an upset? Could we see one of our Fords, or perhaps even our drivers further down in the Corvette, the Ferrari, or indeed the BMW Spring a surprise? Well, it's time to find out as we go. And it's green flag immediately. Jose Manuel Cazon decides to go right as the safety car pulls away. And well, what a smart move there, because look at the gap he's brought himself before they head to the trail breakers over turn one. All the drivers make the and breaking then into the opening corner side by side there. Giovanni Lopez gets the upper hand on Sebastian Verhoeven, and as they make the way out the corner, Jordan Shambin also having a great start, making up some places already, and going into that braking zone 3 wide there. That's a very, very quick move from Honma having a great start as well, going defensive however, but goes too deep, and Roberto Farina looks up the inside here on the corner exit. That'll put him on the outside for the kink of what will be turn number 5, where you will need a lift on cold tyres the first time around, typically with no rear wing being applied, or zero rear wing we should say, and on to the brakes they go. Well, as our drivers do, everyone right now getting very, very itchy, and Will Palfreman and Todd Alia are close together as we that's 2 wide coming out of the second of the hairpins, and that is Manuel Montoro versus Lotz, and Lotz right now trying to hold that inside line. Sebastian Lotz goes all the way in. There's a little bit of rub between the two of them. Well, in fact, they give each other space in the end, but we've had a bit of an instant further back, and it's a big, big moment there for Todd Alia. I'm not quite sure what's happened with regards to our Porsche driver. We'll find out very shortly, but he's had a nightmare start to the day, and well, it's echoes of Spa-Francorchamps ringing out, no doubt about it. But meanwhile, we've got 3 wide further back here, and that was Wanyo Terrell getting ahead of Nick O'Neill and Pavel Poluk as they head on down the back stretch and in towards the bus stop chicane for the first time, making their way in towards that braking zone then. But I think they're going to settle their differences here, and we can expect that BMW to be lightning quick up on the banking, as meanwhile going very high up on the banking. That is Walter Fernandez, I expect, having a slow down for track limits coming through the bus stop chicane, and that's why he's hanging high and dry in order to gradually beat the speed off and not be impeding anybody. But meanwhile, after 1 lap, it's Jose Manuel Cazon who leads, but look at Giovanni Lopez meanwhile under pressure here from Savit Verhoeven. As Verhoeven goes high, looks to the outside, looks back to the inside. Here comes Lopez then as they make the way through, and Lopez going all in for the move here versus Cazon and gets the lead of the race going into turn 1, albeit he's going to have to try and break away now if he can, but breaking away is going to be an absolute nightmare to do here at Daytona today, because the one thing it's very difficult to do is get 1.5 seconds, and if you're in with 1.5 seconds, you're normally in the slipstream zone. But as the drivers come out of turn for the horseshoe hairpin, as it's affectionately known, Joaquin Martins right now P15, a bit of a lonely P15 at the moment. In fact, he's been able to break away from Tyrrell behind and get a little bit far off a job of Palfreman in front, so therefore this is going to be a bit of a lonely race for him, and he might find himself losing the pack in front and gradually being caught up by the pack behind if the pack behind works together, and it's not a happy place in the number 7 car right now, I can tell you that, in the fact that he's going to focus on his own race, but I think he'll also be thinking to himself, why am I so lonely at this point? And as he makes his way in towards turn number 7, he's going to try and trying to get himself nice and close to Palfreman in front, and in fact he has managed to rip out what is 4/10 of a second in that run coming out of turn number 7, and that might be getting an opportunity to get back into the slipstream. But looking back to Giovanni Lopez as they make the way on around and down towards the bus stop chicane the second time, and as they come on down, well, 3/10 at the moment between Lopez and Manuel Cazon. It was a great move into turn 1 at the start of this lap, but where will it be at the end of this lap? Will we see a switchback between the two of them? And Todd Alia here after what was that altercation, which we're going to get a replay of soon. Now looking for the move, and as he goes for it, absolutely clinical there. That moves off into P18, getting ahead of Brackenier, and now on the run and chasing after Pollock next up as he heads on to the oval banking. But looking back towards the front of the field, well, here's your top 3 again, and Lopez leads the end of this lap, but will he be leading into turn 1? You can see Cazon and Vera Boic, looking for a move. Vera Boic looks the inside on Cazon here, and what's going to be side by side between the two of them, under braking, and in the end, well, Manuel Cazon, it just gives the space, doesn't fight it too hard. Further back, we do have Angel Manuel Montoro getting ahead of Joris Peters Weem, and that was for P11 with Ricardo Agudo behind as they come in towards what will be the horseshoe hairpin, and all the drivers right now cycling back and forth, all putting a bit of mental pressure on each other in order to be able to try and get an upper hand, as that's going to be 2 wide on exit, and it's a poor run from what is Montoro, and Peters is just going to sneak his way up the inside, and well, will he be able to get it done? And Montoro here backs out in the end through the kick of 5. I don't think he wanted to, I think he was very keen to try and keep what is that run, but in the end he decides to undo it before he becomes undone with potential contact between himself and one of his rivals. But the drivers head in towards the braking zone for the next sequence of quarters. Well, right now it all calms down, and it gives us a perfect opportunity to take a look at what happened to Todd Alia at the opening lap of the race. here is our replay. So as he made his way out to turn number 6, the second hairpin, keep your eyes out there for the car in the centre of the camera. Was there tap on the rear? Yes, there was. Oh, goodness me. And that was contact with the number 19, and Bullock in the end making the contact and, well, sending Todd Allier sideways. Not quite as big of a nightmare as there was at the Circuit Spa Frank of Scholz, but you can imagine there, Allier will be absolutely fuming at that one because he just can't get a lucky break at this time. We also had an incident for Cedric Boycier. We're not quite sure what's happened to him, but he has had to retire from the race, and I've got no information to suggest as why our 4 GT drivers had to make the retirement, although it must be said that as a result of that retirement, that'll be a bit of a dismal start to his day. And, well, right now as we come back to those live racing pictures, Allier now looking for another opportunity here versus the man who tapped him on the rear only what was at 3 laps ago as they head on to lap number 5. And as they do, well, Allier's so close here, he can literally reach out and grab what is the rear wing of his rivals who ride on board here with the number 5 driver looking to go around the outside. Long run out wide there for Tyrrell, and Allier right now just simply backs off there and lets Tyrrell rejoin, albeit behind him. And, well, that could have been close to tears as Allier rides up on that apex curb. What was the corner? But it's battling side by side still as that's a move up the inside there for Tyrrell on the rejoin. And, well, Allier in the end given the space, getting unsettled as well, too wide through the S slalom. The chicane turns 2 and 3, and as a result now losing out the ground he was trying to make, and Puddle being able to gain some ground and get some distance between himself and his rivals. There's a big lock up there, and that is going to only go one way, and for 1-year Tyrrell, it is going to be the loss of 2 more places. Yes, let Allier and also O'Neill go, and, well, the drivers now moving onwards, and the BMW moves up to P18, and that's 3 places gained for Nick O'Neill on his debut in this top split broadcast as they make the way on through turn number 7 back up onto the banking. And, well, I do believe, ladies and gentlemen, as they now make the way on around, Cedric Boycier has had some damage to the car, intriguingly enough, but he has left the pit lane, so we have not lost our 4 GT driver. We thought there might have been a retirement in the works, but he's back out there, but we don't know what the story is. Perhaps there was some contact we didn't catch on camera, and whereby it's just damaged the suspension of the car, and he's had to tow to the pits. We know he's had to tow, but we don't know why. But meanwhile, rhyme or reasons or knowing why, we see Vera Boric battling with Lopez, and Vera Boric takes the lead of the race as we look back from the rear of your race leader, gaining 1 place since the start. And, well, as they drag race their way towards the timeline here, it's a long, long way to go at Daytona. It's not a sunny day here, but I can tell you one thing, despite the lack of sunshine, this race is putting smiles on our faces here in the Conti booth, because they make the way out to turn number 1 and in towards 2-3. It now becomes the game of being in the long train towards victory, as these drivers right now will all be thinking one thing, which is if I can't break away from the drivers in front of me, then what I need to do is simply run in the draft of the guy in front and save the fuel that enables me to leapfrog my way into the lead when I come out the pits. But of course you've got to do a lot of fuel saving if you want to get ahead and also get a gap between yourself and your rivals, and that's the harder part here. So even with some fuel saving, this may not be a case whereby those who fuel save well in this opening stint suddenly leap the way into the lead and never look back, but it could all change. It all depends on who's going to get impatient, who decides to pit when. But I would imagine if the leader pits in this race, many drivers will all decide to pit together in order not to lose out on the slipstream pack. We're a long way from pit stops, so let's not start hypothesizing too much about the strategy right now. We've still got plenty of racing on its way, and as the drivers come on round onto the banking and in towards what will be the bus stop chicane, well, right now it's definitely looking as though Vera Boric may be dictating the pace, but his rivals behind will be very eager to keep him honest. And we do have what is the best part of our top 11 separated by only 5 seconds. You do the quick mathematics, and that's less than half a second between each of the cars in our top 11. And right at the back of it is Peter Salim, and the Dutchman here making his way onto what is turn number 12, and as he does so, just watching in the distance. And whilst it doesn't look like there's a bit of a Porsche pack here, we do have in amongst that top 11 the Ford GT of Winya Honma, and as he makes his way onwards here, the Soul Ford GT in the top 10, and indeed inside the top 20 of Boycier having to tow to the pits and putting his Ford GT all the way down to last place, 2 laps down in P22. And, well, from them we also do have the Corvette C8R of Antonio Montero, a car that has struggled here at Daytona, according to talking up and down the paddock in the last couple of days. And the reason being for that is, unlike the Porsche in particular, which is why the Porsche is being selected so oftenly, it's a car that struggles in low-speed corners, first and second gear corners, which you can do these hairpins in first or second gear, depending on your preference. Now you've geared the car, it's a car that struggles to get the power down, whereas with the Porsche, or the engine being located where it is, much like the Corvette intriguingly, but the Porsche's power delivery being the difference, it does mean that the Porsche is able just to bury the throttle and absolutely run away on those corner exits, whereas the Corvette's a bit stronger in the medium speed corners, but there's not too many medium speed corners here other than where's the bus stop chicane. But as all drivers make the way out of the infield and back onto the oval banking, we've got a bit of a news story to come here with regards to Thibaut Bracchenier, who's had a bit of an incident only moments ago, and here he, well, in fact, we don't have him out on circuit at the moment. I believe it may be a premature retirement for Bracchenier, and as so, let's take a look at what may have triggered that, and it happened on what is the opening portion of this lap. And this was only moments ago as he was making his way on across that timeline down into turn number 1, and onto the brakes he went. As he did so, runs a bit deep, and the car just goes straight on there, and in the end, brake failure, I think. And well, for Bracchenier, just not able to get the car stopped. Maybe a technical issue with the car, and as a result, his race coming to an abrupt halt. But definitely, he has had to retire from the race, from what we understand. And we're now down to 21 out of our 22 drivers who started this race as current runners. But looking back towards the very front of the field then, and as we do, well, our leader going for the bottom of your picture. Meanwhile, P2 through to P4, followed quickly, and that's Giovanni Lopez keeping Jose Manuel Cazon and Carlos Fagato behind as they come on through. Further back, it's 3 wide here as they come across the timeline, and in the middle, that is going to be none other than what is Angel Manuel Montoro as they come in towards the braking zone, and Ricardo Agudo making his way on through there as well, with Joaquin Martins backing off. But in the fact, it's a big mistake there for Agudo. Oh, goodness me, what on earth's happened there? Is that Alphaman into the, what is the grass? Well, I'm not quite sure, but one driver's taken to the escape road there, and well, we've got a bit of a story all kicking off, and I believe that was Walter Fernandez. Well, no, not Walter Fernandez. We will get an update on exactly what's happened, but that is Peter's Wim, and Wim just crawling to a halt there. That car's going to be towed to the pit. I'm not quite sure what's happened to Peter's Wim, but we will try and find out very shortly. But there's been some drama there. It was the run in towards turn number 4. I think it may have all started through the chicane sequence of 2-3. And then subsequently spiralled into what's the hairpin at turn number 4. But we saw one driver take into what's the motorcycle escape road, alternatively the motorcycle hairpin, or the infield hairpin if you're not running the road course. And well, elsewhere, all the drivers seem to dodge the carnage just about, but multiple drivers caught up in that. And I'm hearing down in my ear, Sebastian Lotz and Joris Peters Wim were the 2 main drivers involved in that, but there might have been a couple others who were affected as well, and we will get a replay of that shortly. But lap number 7 has definitely been a bit of a dramatic lap here as we look back from the rear of what is your P4 driver in the number 11, Jordan Chamberlain here, very excited and a regular of these Top Split broadcasts. I can tell you one thing, it's always a great day when we do have Jordan Chamberlain making his way on through, and well, as he does, currently in at P4, but running all over the back of what is Jose Manuel Cazon just in front of him. And let's look forward, and well, as you can see up there, Cazon just up the road, Lopez as well, as they go 2 wide, and Lopez having to go defensive there under braking. But the key point being the fact, we say he's just off the back, and well, 1 second will feel as though he's right there touching the toe of his rivals, as the leaders are getting a little bit scrabbly just in front as they head in towards turn number 4, and as they make the way towards that braking zone. Will we see a change here? Bojic does not seem to be under too much pressure to give way, but then again, I think he'll be thinking about one thing and one thing only at this point, and that is just simply maintaining his momentum. As further back, we do have Joaquin Martins battling there with Jonathan Palferman. Palferman going for the cutback run, with Martins going all in under braking, and Martins gets the place back. And well, a little bit of a brave move there from the number 7 driver, and Palfman just playing it smart and waited his turn. And I think deciding to protect the tyres, because those will be very valuable, having fresher tyres in the second half of the race, where we're not expecting our drivers to change their tyres in the pit lane. They'll only put the fuel in, and then it's all about how much compound is left. And Daytona, whilst it's a simplistic circuit, it's also one with quite high tyre degradation. And oh, goodness me, a big snap slide there for Palfman, just catches the car in time. And I think a little bit late on the brakes there for the dirty air that was being thrown over the front of the car, and in the end having to prevent a lock-up by simply letting the brakes roll off, but in doing so having to correct the steering. And brilliant car control there from Palferman. It will cost him the place for what is P13. He'll drop behind Pullock, and also I believe there Todd Allier's going to look for the move, or will he? No, he won't. In fact, he hasn't quite got the speed to get involved here. But Palferman versus the Pullock, and in the end Pullock backing off, so deciding to fall out of that battle, and I think just playing it conservatively, knowing the damage he's already got on the car and not wanting to pick up any further damage at this time. He's playing it safe, and I think he's hoping that his 2 rivals will push each other a little bit too hard, and that's where we have pick up the places. Although saying that, Allier has now picked up a slowdown penalty coming out of the bus stop chicane. That will be for track limits, and that's going to cost him. So a very frustrating moment for the 2 drivers there, swapping back and forth. And meanwhile, Palferman regaining the place he lost by simply not making any errors and putting himself in the right place at the right time. Speaking of similar aspects, Joaquin Martins there moving up into P11, goes a bit wide at turn number 1. You are allowed to run that wide in order to open up the corner, but it's a less grippy surface the wider you run there. And well, as a result, gets ahead of Ricardo Agudo and stays ahead after the exit of 1 1 and through 2, 3 in towards 4. But right now the number 7 driver here finds himself locked into this battle, and indeed we're starting to see the top 11 spread out a little bit more. The gap from P1 to P11 has now effectively doubled from what was 5.5 seconds 4 laps ago now to 11.1 seconds, and it seems as though the theme here really being that everyone's now starting to focus a little bit more on battling within their packs. But speaking of instants and what separated the field, we had an instant on lap number 7 between Walter Fernandez, well, not Walter Fernandez, but we had him in a separate instant, but also on Peters, Beam and Lotz, and let's get a bit of an update on what exactly happened there for a replay. So we start with what happened to Walter Fernandez heading towards the braking zone, and this was into turn number 1. Trail braking his way on through, runs a little bit deep and wide, and in the, oh goodness me, the car grounding out, oh my lord, and well, it was a freeway incident in the end, and well, Walter Fernandez committing to the bit to run over what was the curbing into turn number 2, but the car being so low, it bottomed out, and that's the sparks you saw. But then for Joris Peters Veem and Sebastian Lotz, they came into the scene of the incident. This was the on-board from Peters Veem, and what exactly happened here? Well, you see Fernandez on the right, Veem too wide here, and then suddenly Fernandez comes across, ends up collecting what was Lotz, and Veem just happened to be in the wrong place at the right time to also be picked off there. A nightmare instant between the drivers, and well, a very frustrating one. But let's take a look at that from Sebastian Lotz's perspective on one of our other replay cameras, and well, he was the one who ended up really being on the warpath of the errant Walter Fernandez, and you can see there the car bouncing around off the grass, and oh my lord, that was onto 2 wheels for a brief moment there, almost rolling the car over, and the number 10 driver in the end, that's why he's had to tow to the pits due to the damage. And well, Peters Veem also having to do the same. Both drivers there involved in an incident that really has been for them a race destroying, and I believe they're still waiting the repair work in the pit lane as we come towards the end of the first third of the race and into very shortly what will be the 17th minute. But we've still got a way to go and a long way to go before we see potential strategy start to play out. But back to your live pictures and back towards what is here your top 7, led by Verbovic, and then we do have Lopez, Manuel Cazon, followed by Shamblin, and then Honma, Farina, Hodato, and then none other than what is Montero, who is the best part of 2 seconds off of this top 7 pack in the Corvette C8R. Well, the only car that's not a Porsche in the top 7 is this Ford GT, run by the Japanese driver of Yunya Honma, and as it makes its way up towards what is the bus stop chicane, still staying right in this hunt here, and well, making its way under braking and all the way through it. If many of you are wondering why we're not seeing the man, the machine of Ford GT, and that is of course Michael Ross. Unfortunately he's not quite able to make it today, but we will be seeing him back in a couple of weeks time, and well, in the meantime we do wish Michael well, and it was great to see him in what was our season opening week 1 at Cirque du Spa-Francorchamps. And well, as we look back to the front of the field right now, your front runner Verbovic under a bit more pressure here from Lopez and Manuel Cazon this time. I think they're getting as close as he dares to do so, Lopez, without bump drafting, but now he's looking up the inside, but he backs out there, and Lopez essentially saying to Verbovic, look, I just want you to run your race right now, I don't want to fight this. But pulling out of the toe there as well to bleed off a little bit of excess speed, because you can imagine the speeds they're carrying as they make the way on around, but they're pushing upwards to the best part of 165 miles an hour, then towards 170, and that is always a lot of speed to be carried at short notice. But meanwhile, we do have a little bit of fighting here at short notice through turns 1, 2 and 3, and that is Pavel Poluk getting ahead of Wanyu Terul, and Terul there behind, as we've got a lot of smoke being kicked up there. I'm not quite sure what's happened. Perhaps when he's run a bit wide, well, there's been a lock up from a car in front, perhaps from Agudo or Palferman, and well, nothing to tell us there's been an incident. But meanwhile, without incident, these two continue to fight, and the same here, and 2 wide coming through turn 6, and that is a big sideways moment there for what is Montoro as he battles with Joaquin Martins, and Martins right now holding on. This is a big lockout for Martins, and meanwhile he manages just to avoid the tyre barrier, and Ricardo Agudo makes his way on through as well. So it's 2 places lost for Joaquin Martins, who really has been the master of the late braking until he wasn't the master there into turn number 7, and well, the number 7 driver there losing those 2 places and almost losing the distant Turbo Gudo, albeit thankfully able to get it just back under wraps before he made his way onto the bank and able to carry some speed, as otherwise he would have been falling into the clutches of Palferman very quickly. You can see Jonathan Palferman there in the rear of the picture for a brief moment as they head up towards what will be at the bank in the turn 12. Swap of position further back, that's P14 now being taken by Terul ahead of Poluk, and these two swapping the places back and forth as much as they dare to dream to do so. But then looking further up the order, we do have the Corvette here of Antonio Montero being pushed on by Walter Fernandez for a brief moment, and I think Fernandez there just giving a light little bump draft, a little tap to the rear of Montero to give him a little bit more speed on the run through in towards turn number 1, but backing off as well once they cross that start finish line, because going up into the banking, you've got to be very careful to bump draft on the banking in these cars. Even a slight deviation in the steering from from dead centre. They can very quickly send both cars round, and it can lead to a nightmare high-speed incident. And as they come out of the horseshoe hairpin at turn number 4, Mantero right now just doesn't quite have the pace of the pack in front and is gradually drifting away from the gap to what is Hadato now being 2.3 seconds, and that gap not coming down. So unless Mantero can pull some magic with fuel saving, this might be a race now where he's focusing more on the battle for P8 unless the leaders fight incredibly hard in that second stint. But anything is possible here until we see that checker flag, and indeed as they make the way back up to the banking this time. And there may not be too much battling going on inside the top 10, but just at the bottom end of it and outside of it, we've got plenty going on. Joaquin Martins versus Ricardo Agudo, and well, Martins back in front of Agudo now. These two constantly fighting back and forth, and well, it's absolutely brilliant to see here. Both of them throwing everything at this, and well, the confidence is absolutely shown from both drivers, and they head up onto the banking. And to put you in the frame of mind as to how much speed they're carrying, well, there you go in the bottom right hand corner of your screen, making their way down into the bus stop chicane, and that is without a fully fledged toe. That's a gap to a car in front of 7/10, but heading in there in excess of 170 miles an hour. Well, as he makes his way on through and out of the bus stop chicane, what about your second place driver, for example, Giovanni Lopez, in terms of the speeds they're picking up? Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen, 181 miles an hour in the draft before he has to back off to avoid tapping the race leader on the rear too aggressively. So they're heading into turn 1 at 180 miles an hour. They've got to brake hard there. Remember, no anti-lock braking system as well, so all the braking is modulated by the driver and not the braking systems, and that is what makes these GTE cars so fascinating to drive, because you really do have to be right on the edge of the limit of what is the capability of your brakes. And well, speaking of being on the edge of capability, that is Joaquin Martins, who's gone on around there at turn number 1. What exactly has happened to the number 7 driver? That is a surprise and not a welcome one. He was running quite well and battling for the bottom end of the top 10 on the right to be best of FP11, and his race now has gone a long way round. And take a quick rewind to understand why. Here is the replay of Joaquin Martins' instant. And making his way down into turn number 1. This might have been, as a result, a bit of a side-by-side moment. Oh, goodness me, and there was a bit of contact there between himself and his rival, and I believe that was none other than Ricardo Agudo, who ended up making the tap to the rear left quarter panel from the driver's perspective of Joaquin Martins, and a frustrating moment there. And I think he'll feel as though by taking that wide line, he had the right to take the racing line through the corner. And well, I think Agudo would argue, well, you left the door open and I had the opportunity to put the car in there, and it's difference is the driver's perspective, and thankfully we're just in the commentary booth and we're not a potential iRacing steward. Would that be submitted as an iRacing instant report? But still, that's where I tries to settle outside of the race. Right now they can only focus on what they can do as they're racing their way on around. And well, as we look back to your leader, Zara Boic, still only 2 tenths clear, and it's going to be a recurring theme as we now do start to head into pit stop territory here. We are 22 minutes through, we're at the halfway point, and normally we do see our leaders go long, but now will we see some fames be born here? Will Manuel Cazon pulls out to the outside, goes high behind Honma, making the move up the inside of Chamblin here. He's going to go 1, he's going to go 2. It's a brilliant piece of manoeuvring here from Honma, and he gets both of them. And look at Manuel Cazon, he was caught out massively as a result of that, and Honma moves into P3. So right now the Ford GT driver is essentially laying down the gauntlet, which is, you know what, it's time to make a move because the pit stop window is definitely coming through. Now that was a good move, and Manuel Cazon, I think, tried to take a little nip back there into what was turn 4, but couldn't quite make it happen. John Chamblin being muscled down to P5, but he won't be too upset about that. He's still watching the leaders, and Honma, they're going a little bit deeper into the corner compared to his rivals. Very interesting line there, and I do wonder whether in that Ford GT should take a slightly different approach compared to the Porsches around. We know that the Porsche is the strongest car on the brakes out of all the GTEs on the current balance of performance. We know this Ford GT doesn't quite have the brakes, and also it is a little bit more of a car that leans into medium speed corners rather than low speed corners, albeit the setup can always change that. And right now Honma definitely showing that in his hairpin, so long as he gives himself enough room to the apex, he will be able to take an absolutely wonderful line. And speaking of wonderful moments, well, I think we should take a look back on that move that was only made moments ago by Honma in towards turn number 1, and what a move. It could be one of the moves of the season, ladies and gentlemen. Here's the replay, and this was on board. And as he made his way in towards the braking zone, then Honma making that move, then picking up a huge overspeed, takes Chamblin, and then all the way here to the inside. You'll see Manuel Cazon takes it nice and slow and sunny. A Ford GT just appears out of nowhere on the inside, and in the end finds himself completely ambushed. Then you see him in the rear television camera, and Junior Honma absolutely delivering there a golden move, and arguably the move of the season so far. And well, as he makes his way back up to speed on your live pictures here as they come up through what is turn number 1 once again. Well, these drivers right now pushing each other as much as possible, but nobody will want to bit That is the important thing. You can imagine what everyone will try and do here is stay together as Pollock makes his way into the pit lane to look at my Conti booth window, but he's all the way down in P13 as he's pitted, releasing the likes of Tyrrell and also Alia and Martins up the running order. But for what is our drivers right now, inside this top 7, it really is going to be dictated by what the top 3 do strategy-wise, and the drivers behind will all make a call as to whether they follow the car in front into the pits or whether they try and stay with the wider pack. And that does mean it's a bit opposite compared to the racing you would typically see at most other circuits, where it's normally the game of you decide to try and undercut if you're behind or if you're the leader, go as long as possible. But here it's the opposite. It is really follow the leader all the way to that final lap, and whoever is in the charge in the slipstream on the final lap really is the prime candidate to potentially try and steal that win at the checker flag. But as our drivers make the way on through, 25 minutes complete, 20 still to go plus that final lap, and well, it's still Verhoevovic who leads, albeit by 2/10 over Giovanni Lopez. And well, a bit further back we do have the Corvette C8R of Montero still keeping what is Porter Fernandez behind, albeit Fernandez here I think would be very keen for Montero to be a bit close to the leaders, the gap being 2.7 seconds, but Fernandez and Montero I think both running at the best possible pace they can, and well, this is all they've got in the tank at the moment. And they'll be hoping there's a bit of fighting in front, which does enable them to inch a bit closer. Speaking of which, we come back to the front of the field then as they make their way across that timeline. And well, Antonio Montero has come into the pit lane as I look out my Conte booth window. He is in, as that is a long run deep there for what is Manuel Cazan. He runs all the way to the outside and just set the fastest lap of the race, a 40.514. And well, Cazan, I think they're deciding to just bleed onto speed by running deep and absolutely nailing the line in. The only thing is when you run that wide out, firstly, you have to be very careful if a driver who's behind you decides to dive to the inside of you because they think the space is there. And we did see a similar incident only moments ago between a couple of our drivers. But right now, Cazan doing everything right in P4 with John Shamblin just waiting in the wings there, looking for an opportunity. But meanwhile, outside of these leaders, well, it is pit stop season with Antonio Montero leaving the pit lane. He was the first to pull the trigger on pit stops, but then we have a whole plethora of drivers making their way out of pit row, including what is Angel Manuel Montoro. Also, we do have Jonathan Palfman leaving the pit lane. Wanyo Tyrrell making his way out. These guys are all going to be close together. Joaquin Martins still in his pit box. Matthias Matthew Siegel still in the pit box there in the Ferrari 488 GTE. Finally comes down off of the jacks there, so I think actually going for a tyre change, deciding to go all in here. Now he's got nothing to lose, and well, these drivers right now make themselves back up to speed. Joaquin Martins just in front, but the Ferrari driver here will give it his all to the very end. And it has been a frustrating race. Cedric Boycier, meanwhile, has a little bit of a wobble down to breaking into turn number 1. He is what is 2 laps down the overall leaders. So therefore, Boycier, this is all about just getting time behind the wheel at Daytona rather than chasing any places right now. But it's always good to get experience, and it's always a good idea to try and finish your races where possible, as that way you can always walk away a little bit satisfied that you did see that checker flag. But meanwhile, into the pit lane come your leaders. The only ones who don't come on in are Jose Manuel Cazan, Roberto Farina and Carlos Hudato. But meanwhile, in comes Savit Verbovic, also Giovanni Lopez, also Junior Honma comes in the Ford GT, also got John Shamblin and Porter Fernandez in, Ricardo Agudo in as well, a bit further back. So it is pit stop time right now, but how far can these leaders go with regards to the fact they've saved the fuel for at least one more lap? Well, there's already fighting. That's Hodato diving up the inside there of Roberto Farina into turn number 4. So swap of places as the sun begins to come out and the mist and fog is starting to be dispersed. But as he heads through turn number 5 and in towards 6, Hodato right now, no, that fighting with Farina has already cost him 1.5 seconds to Manuel Cazan. And that little bit of a moment there could potentially relegate them to the back of what will be the lead pack when it is reunited once these drivers make their pit stop at what we believe is the end of this lap. Because as they make the way into the banking, well, meanwhile, as Verhoevovic has come back out as your leader of the second pack, or the first pit stop pack, if you will, running P4, we believe this is effectively the lead right now for Verhoevovic, ahead of Giovanni Lopez, Junior Honma, John Shamblin, Porter Fernandez. And they've not changed places as far as I can see. They've come out as they went into the pit lane, and they're all still very close together. And Verhoevovic did a fantastic job, I suspect, of fuel saving on that opening stint in the first part of it in order to be able to retain the lead when he's come back out. But he won't be breaking away anytime soon, and that will be on his mind as meanwhile the leaders make their way, or the leaders out of the circuit make their way across the bank in the turn number 12. This is Manuel Cazan as he heads across in towards what will be the flat run. Will he peel into the pit? Surely he's got to here. Yes, he does. And he makes his way on in there and well, avoiding locking up the brakes as much as possible. You don't put excess temperature temperature into the front tyres, or indeed the front brakes, and it is Manuel Cazon, Hadato, and also Farina all coming on in here and all deciding to run as a pack. And well, as they make the way on down, now will be the big question of where they fit in to the drivers who pitted the lap before, as lap number 18 will be triggered, and as they make the way onto the 18th tour of the circuit under race conditions. Well, here is Verha Boic, and well, as we look to that blimp camera, we won't get the best of views, unfortunately. The blimp, they're still being masked by the fog, but you can just about see their reflections in the sunlight here as they head up onto the banking up for the start-finish line. Manuel Cazon, meanwhile, leaving that pit lane, and in fact, look at the jump that Manuel Cazon has made. You can see there comes the second pack making their way through, and well, they're all going to reunite, but what a surprise. Oh, goodness me, it's a big moment there for Roberto Farina, who's had a spin on pit lane exit, and his race is in tears as he hits the concrete on the pit exit wall, and Roberto Farina making a huge error there on pit lane exit. It's all gone wrong, and this surprising start, an unwelcome one for Roberto Farina, but a hugely welcome one here for Jose Manuel Cazon, who's had the shortest pit stop of what is many towards the front of the field, and he's opened up almost a 2-second gap to Sabit Verhoevic. Now, if he can open that gap up and get it to 2 seconds and then continue to extend it for a couple of laps, Manuel Cazon may be able to break away, and he may be able to take the lead this race off into the distance with 15 minutes to go. It's going to be on a knife edge right now, and if you are Sabit Verhoevic, you've got to be thinking, right, if I've got the drivers behind me, do I let them slingshot past me under the slipstream here? No, we will naturally get closer to Manuel Cazon if I let them do it. Of course, the problem is here the fact they're not talking to each other, these drivers. They're all racing as independents inside this pack, and therefore they do have to think or try to predict what the driver around them's doing. You can see Lopez there just tucking in and not trying to look for a move here into the bus stop chicane. So therefore Verhoevic right now really is going to pull this pack onto the back of Manuel Cazon, and well, if he can't do so, then this race, or the battle for lead, is going to come down to whether Manuel Cazon can hold on for the best part of 14 minutes plus that final lap and not make any errors to cause that gap to come back down, because this is strategic masterclass here from the Spaniard as he makes his way up towards the timing line. He's opened that gap up enough, and will we see some movement here from P2 through to P4? Will they now get antsy and think, right, we've got to chase that leader? Well, because on cross line, 1.9 seconds into the braking zone for turn number 1, and that is a move there on Honma versus by what is Hadato. He goes up the inside, then the Ford GT driver gets a little bit shaken up, as it's going to be Shamlin who also gets through as well. So Junior Honma, who pulled off that brilliant 2-for-1 pass into turn number 1 just before the pit stop, well, now he finds himself losing the 2 places. Game is demoted back to P6 as they make the way in towards what will be turn number 5. We see one of our drivers there running slowly. That is one of our drivers who is a number of laps down. It's in fact 6 laps down, and that is none other than one is Peters Vim, and in the end steering clear with the blue flags waving and just trying to get to the end as the lead pack is completely uncompromised coming through. But the one thing that is definitely noticeable is that Manuel Cazon is running away at the front. The gap now up to 2.5 seconds, and well, right now this is going to become a big pack that's only battling for second and not the lead. But meanwhile, whilst all this has played out, of course, we did have that big moment for Roberto Farina only moments ago when he left the pit lane. And well, ladies and gentlemen, we need to get a replay of what exactly happened to Roberto Farina in a very frustrating moment. And this was the replay, and let's ride on board here and listen in. Oh, goodness me, just a little bit greedy with the throttle pedal there, going through the pit lane exit of turn 1, and in the end hitting what was the barrier twice in quick succession, and that doing suspension damage to the rear right of the car. The suspensions of these GTs being quite sensitive to side full-on impacts, and in the end Roberto Farina's race just ended up in the wall on the pit exit and never making it to the second stint. It's an easy mistake to make, just being a little bit too eager to carry that speed on the pit lane exit and feeling as though he had to get out there as quickly as possible. And well, that was the story there of Roberto Farina's race. It all ended in the pits. But meanwhile, it's not ending here between our leaders, or at least the battle for P2, we should say, as they all come round through turn number 1 once again. The gap now to Manuel Cazon up to 3 seconds. So Manuel Cazon has absolutely nailed the outlap, and Sabit Verhoevic right now is really going to be leading the fight for P2 all the way to the final closing laps. As they make the way out of turn number 4 and in towards 6. The strategy has played off for one driver, and now as he breaks away, it's the rest of the field who are going to have to fight over these places all the way to the end of the day. And well, for Giovanni Lopez here, you don't want to be up front. You want to be in this P3 position. all the way to the end, really, for the reason you may have underfueled the car, for example, and if you have, you can fuel save. Meanwhile, Verhoeven cannot fuel save unless he backs the pace of this pack off, but at that point, if you're Lopez and you feel as though you've got the fuel, you can suddenly leap your way to the front of the pack if the timing is right. It really is a game of high-speed chess here. Imagine playing a game of chess, albeit on an average speed of somewhere in the region of 140 miles an hour over the course of the lap, and well, you can imagine there it is going to be one of the situations whereby you've got to think very quickly, but you've got to make the right strategy calls here in terms of how you weave and wind your way in amongst the traffic. But as Hadato follows on behind, and then Chamberlain and Honma, well, they're all waiting together. Further back, meanwhile, these two absolutely joined at the hip, and that is Walter Fernandez, who has in fact jumped ahead of Antonio Montero as a result of the pit stop, but the two still running together, albeit in the opposite order, with Montero taking the pit stop a lap earlier than Fernandez, many of you remember, and right now just making the way on through there, and where's Montero in the sole Corvette of this field, staying with his rival for as long as he possibly can. Montero gets a bit close here. Will he look for the move? In fact, he is going to. He's going to take his gloves off here and decide, you know what, we're going to swap places. Now, will Fernandez just let it go? And the answer is yes, he will. He'll tuck back into the toe, as meanwhile the Porsche behind him there, and I believe that is the Porsche of none other than what is Sebastian Lutz, just following on around in towards turns 1 and 2, being that's 11 laps down. He can't get involved in this, but it's good to see him back out there and running that car all the way to the close. As they head in towards turn at number 4, well, let's take a look further down the order in terms of your lead lap order, and this is Tyrrell versus Paluk, with Powerman also watching from behind as they all slide and weave their way through the corners, and we ride aboard in fact here with the P14 driver in the number 21, Jonathan Powerman, as he heads onto the brakes into turn 4. Now, all three drivers here in the Porsche, all with significantly worn tyres now compared to how they started the race. And what that means is you'll start to see these little slides, these little wobbles and weaves of the car as they make the way through these hairpins, these low-speed corners. Remember, they've got very little rear wing. Most of our drivers here will be running a 0 rear wing setting, the minimum effectively, or as close as possible to minimum. So that means they've got very little rear downforce. But in return, they also do have the mid-engine rear-wheel drive configuration, the engine being behind the driver, but not over the rear axle, unlike in the traditional Porsche 911 configuration. The Porsche 911 RSR GTE being the only 911 racing car in the modern era of motorsport which doesn't have the engine in the rear-wheel drive rear position. Instead, it's mid-engine rear-wheel drive, and as they make the way on towards the backstretch here, will Powerman right now just staying nice and close and wait to see how he can get involved in this battle for P12 between Paulo Canturo and just watching at a distance. But I suspect when the time is right, he will strike, but he's still got 9 minutes to think about when is the right time to try and pounce the move. But as they make the way onwards, we look to what is your leaders here, and this is the battle for P2, and that is Hadato, who are up the inside of Verhoeven. Verhoeven, meanwhile, losing the place there, and, well, Giovanni Lopez thinking about the move here. And in fact, Hadato, I think, has made 2 places in what is the space of the 1 corner, because he was not in P3 at the start of this lap. Surely, we're going to get a replay of that very shortly to explain what's happened, but I think there, Carlos Hadato has made some brilliant moves in order to make that progress into turn 1, and I mean, it's caught Verhoeven and Lopez by surprise, as meanwhile Honma and Chamberlain just watching on. These 5 cars all running brilliantly together right now as they make the way in towards turn number 7, and in fact I think we can get a quick replay as to explain how exactly that move was made by Hadato as we head on towards the banking, and indeed now we do head to the aforementioned replay. This was in the run on down, and as they made the way, and in fact the number 9 of Hadato had already made its way ahead at the end of that lap, but then there was the side-by-side battling here between Verhoeven and Hadato in towards turn number 1, trying to go all the way around the outside of Verhoeven, but in the end, by running out wide, he ended up battling more with Giovanni Lopez. So we caught the tail end of that battle, and I think it might have been a double pass on the slipstream. In fact, we do have what was the wider move made that started all this off, and well, here we go then. This was the move made by Carlos Hadato for the 2 places up into P2, and it was a double draft, and in the end, these 2 rivals got in high, and he just decides, well, if you're going to leave the door open, guys, I'm going to squeeze my way on the inside into turn 1, and a lovely bit of manoeuvring there, and a bit of opportunism, no doubt about it. As we come back to racing pictures now, live on screen, you think it's deja vu if they go 3 wide. Surely not into turn 1 this time around. There's a bit of a prank there on the rear of the car. Lopez pushing himself to the inside, and Carlos Hadato trying to close the door as much as possible. It's still too wide here as they come through 1, 2 and 3, and Carlos Hadato back ahead. Lopez backing out. They're known it's 2 tight into 3, trying to squeeze up the inside into 4. Small rub between the 2 of them as they come for a small lock up of the brakes as well for Hadato, but just about holds on as Lopez in the end can't get the power down, and as they head up towards what will be turn turn number 6 here. Will Carlos Hurtado right now, I think with that one move, I think it's been a signal to everyone, which is all right, gentlemen. The gloves are off now. We're all going to fight until the end of this race, giving our race leaders 5 seconds plus away. There's no point waiting for him anymore to come to us. We're just going to have to squabble over who's on that podium. And as they head in towards turn number 7, well, right now, the number 9 driver here trying to keep the number 1 driver, Giovanni Lopez, ahead. And why is this significant in terms of door numbers? Well, for the uninitiated, in official iRacing series, when you are in a split, whether it's top split, bottom split, etc., your door number represents how high you are rated versus your rivals. And that does mean the number 1 driver has the highest I rating of everybody in the lobby, and therefore that's the driver you want to beat if your door number's not number 1. And right now, Hurtado, I think, wanting to try and hold in his P2 in that number 9 as much as possible, and Lopez being the number 1 and the number 2 Savit Verhobovic behind. We can imagine it's going to feel like an absolutely huge score on the door for Hurtado if he is able to hold on to that place all the way to the end. You can see a flash of lights there from Verhobovic, and I think Verhobovic, not knowing he's on camera necessarily, but I think trying to send the message to what is Lopez, which is, look, I'm not going to fight you, just get us back to the P2 car right now, because there's no point fighting, otherwise we'll relinquish our positions. And here we go then, it's going to be a drag race into turn number 1, and it's going to be 2 wide at the front of this battle for P2. Lopez on the outside, Hurtado on the inside, and as they make the way through the opening corner, big slide there for Lopez, just about giving enough room. Both drivers squeezed each other as much as possible, and the Ford GT of Honda just watching behind as does Shamblin as they head down to the braking. It's an absolutely determined drive for all the drivers here at Daytona, but only one of them can be the runner-up of this race, and Hurtado and Lopez still fighting each other as they come out of turn number 4, in towards 5, into left-hander they go. Hurtado ahead now, they enter the brakes, 5 minutes remain, we've still got more laps to go. It's a quick switch to the inside of the brake, and it's a small tap, it's going to send Hurtado sideways, and Lopez in the end does get through, and well, I think in the end the door might have been almost shut, but still Lopez feels like it wasn't quite shut enough to dissuade him from making the move. So Carlos Hurtado there into P3, but you can see now Verhobovic trying to get involved, as it's a very tight exit there from Honmo, just tries to get the better run and cuts back on the inside, but he won't be able to do so in that Ford GT, and he will have to settle back in. But this lead battle right now takes a new turn of a dimension as Giovanni Lopez tries to run away. Now will Hurtado try and keep Verhobovic and Honma behind? We can see the Verhobovic going high, decides in the end just to tuck into the toe, and Hurtado decides in turn to run up behind Lopez, but I can imagine going into turn 1 on the next lap, it's not going to be as civil as this. I think they are going to get a little bit more elbows out each and every lap now, all the way to that checkered flag as your race leader. He's off camera 7 seconds up the road, Manuel Cazon. He won't know anything about this. All he'll know is that he is running into a more and more comfortable lead, and he doesn't need to put himself under pressure. But as I try to head up onto the bank in the 12, then you can see Lopez half a second clear. Here comes the move from Verhobovic to try and get ahead of Hurtado on the outside in towards 1, but he pulls too soon, and as to tuck back into the toe, he hasn't got enough of an overspeed here. And meanwhile, Hurtado back on the inside. Carlos Hurtado goes on in. There's a rub between the two battlers of P2, and I think there Lopez being sent a message, which is, look, we're going to rub doors because you rubbed me in the previous lap. Let's calm it down. And as they come down into turn number 4, we'll keep it clean, gents, because this is some brilliant racing so far. So Hurtado goes slightly deep. Lopez tries to get the door back open, trying to put his nose in, gets a sniff of a move, but can't quite find it in the end. And as they make the way in towards turn number 6, this is how close it's going to get between the two drivers as Hurtado bounces his way over the apex curve of turn number 5. And well, Lopez now looking down the outside. You can tell that Carlos Hurtado deciding to defend absolutely as hard as possible onto the inside line of turn 6, because he knows that if the door's slightly open, Lopez is going to go for it. He will send for it. And meanwhile, Lopez goes deep. He goes deep into turn 7. Here comes Verhobovic, and this is going to cause all the cars behind to scramble now as they're all going to try and find a way through. Verhobovic does get ahead of Lopez. Meanwhile, Honma just waits behind the Ford GT as they come on through and on towards the bus stop chicane. Your race leader already making his way into said chicane, and well, there will be this lap plus 2 more if my mental mathematics is correct, albeit right now these drivers won't be thinking about the mass, they won't be thinking about the fuel, they'll just be thinking about racing all the way to the end if they've all got the fuel to be able to do so. Looking further back meanwhile, well, this is Montero versus Fernandez. Porter Fernandez has fallen back behind Montero in recent laps. We did see the two swap places a few laps ago, but I think Fernandez here will just be thinking about staying in that run all the way to what will be the final lap and then looking for the move. But from them, well, we do look to the drivers making their way then onto what will be the penultimate lap of racing with 2 and a bit minutes to go. Manuel Cazon's already on to what is lap number 26, so he will guarantee us 1 more lap after this. Meanwhile, Hurtado and Verhobovic start it now. You can see there Lopez down on the inside. Verhobovic leaves the door open, but Lopez is not going to dive all the way in. He knows that if he tries to do so, it's only going to never-ending tears between all the drivers. And meanwhile, riding on board here with Jordan Shamblin in P6. Well, I can tell you one thing, both Shamblin and Honma have got the patience of saints, as that's a lock-up there. Now, who was the lock-up for? I think that was Verboich who went deep. He almost followed Hadato. In fact, followed what was, I believe, Hadato deep into the corner. So it does lead to a little bit of scramble there, but they settle down and Lopez backs off into P4. But small lock-ups here, and this is where things are going to get very tense between all the drivers as they come in towards what will be turn at number 6. The fact these brakes will be absolutely boiling hot. The tyres will be worse to wear, and therefore all these drivers right now will be pushing each other to the absolute limit as they make the way through. We're staying with the battle for the podium positions all the way to the end, ladies and gentlemen, and we do appreciate the fact we've got some drivers making quick runs. In fact, we are going to look back slightly to one driver who, after that open lap instant, finds himself in P11 on the back of P10. Todd Alia here chasing after Angel Manuel Montoya and also Ricardo Agudo to try and score a top 10. They're both right in front of him, so we will keep our eyes peeled on this fight in the background. But we've got to come back to the battle for P2 right now. As you can see here, it is a little peak there, cheeky peak from Lopez, but that's going to put him offline, and Lopez just about brings it back together in the number 1, but that was a very hairy, scary moment, no doubt about it. And well, as they make the way through, he's picked up a slowdown, and that is going to cost Lopez some speed. He'll tuck back in behind Honda, and as he does so, well, right now Shamblin tuck it onto the line as well. It's going to be a long line of cars there as they go on to one more lap of Daytona. The race leader Manuel Cazon already across that line, but here comes Verboich. He goes high, he goes wide. The number 2 looks to fly on through, but Hadato stays on the inside here. He's going to fight this all the way to the end, gets the inside of turn 1. Verboich backs off, he can't find a way in. Lopez meanwhile has had to serve his full slowdown, so Honma and Shamblin have broken away from Lopez for a brief moment, so Hadato still holds on to P2 for now. Then it's Verboich, then Honma, and then Shamblin in this 4-way battle for the second place spot as they come on down. Well, from them, let's take a quick look back here to Alia, who's trying to break his way into the top 10. Can he do it versus Aguda and Montoro? Not this time. You can see they're looking for the long sweeping run around the outside to cut that to the inside on the exit of 1. He can't quite find it, so that quick battle there. But then we come back to the fight for P2. We're trying to keep an eye on these battles inside the top 10 all the way to the end, ladies and gentlemen. And well, as our race leaders are already up onto the bank in a turn at number 8. Well, here's Hadato right now trying to lead this field on the round. There will be one more set of corners, and then it's one long drag race, that checker flag. And right now, if your name's Carlos Hadato, you've got to be thinking, surely I've done everything right here and I've just got to nail the bus stop, and then hope with absolute prayers in his mind that he can just run away all the way to the end. But will he be able to, given the fact that Verboich, Honma and Shamblin will all have their own ideas of how much slipstream they're going to pick up and how quickly they get out of the bus stop chicane? But we will see as they go left, right, and then right, left once again. Coming out, it's going to be the drag race between them as they power their way on through. And here we go there, ladies and gentlemen, the last drag race to the line between these drivers. And as they do, well, meanwhile, we look to your race leader here because the checker flag waves. It's been a faultless race, and Jose Manuel Cazon will take victory at Daytona. But who will be second? Will it be Hadato? Will it be Verboich? Here they come then. Verboich on the low line. He goes below the yellow line. He will at least be classified as P2. And then it's going to be Hadato P3, Honma P4, and then John Shamblin at P5, Giovanni Lopez P6, followed by Antonio Montero, Balta Fernandez, and well, goodness me, what an ending to the race there. Verboich trying to go below the yellow line, which I believe is legal, but I'm sure somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. And meanwhile here, we do have the outrunning of Ricardo Agudo by Angel Manuel Montoro, who will take P9 right at the close. Meanwhile, it's P11 for Jonathan Palfreman, and we've lost Todd Alley. I think he's had to come into the pit lane for a splash and dash of fuel, and that is going to be heartbreaking there. He finishes P13 behind this man, Wanyo Tarul, and then it will be at Pavel Poluk, who finished P14 ahead of Nick O'Neill. Joaquin Martins finishes P16, and then we will have Matthias Matthew Siegel in a very quiet race in the Ferrari 488 take P17, and it will be, he's yet to finish his race, ladies and gentlemen, but as he makes one around, we'll give him a round of applause for the simple reason many may have retired the car, but not so for Cedric Boissier here in the Ford GT, and the fact that he is going to make his way all the way round here, and he will be taking what will be P18 2 laps down. But as they say, it's not about how you start, it's about how you finish, and he's going to finish with a checkered flag in his eye as he comes to that timeline in true racer spirit. But what a race, and I've got to agree with you there with regards to we have, well, I can't quite get that the username absolutely spot on, but I'm going to refer to you as Wayhababati, and well, hopefully that's the best pronunciation I can do there. But a great race, like you say, and goodness me, what a race here we have had at Daytona International Speedway today. And well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, let's get you those race results subject to Eddie Stewart's inquiries, and here they are. So after 45 minutes of absolutely fast, furious and intense racing, that's what we love to see in the official iRacing GTE Sprint Series. And indeed, for Season 2 of 2025, Week 2 at Daytona in our top split broadcast, it was none other than Jose Manuel Cazon who took victory in the end over Sabit Verhebovic by a gap of 9.1 seconds. It was incredibly close on the opening stint, but we got to see there's some strategic mastery from Manuel Cazon in the end, doing the absolute best of fuel save, gaining over a second and a half in the pit lane, and then just coming away into the lead and pulling out enough of a gap to then run away off into the distance. Sabit Verhebovic P2 ahead of Carlos Hidalgo at P3. What a run to the finish then. Verhebovic taking that victory by a sliver, by less than a tenth ahead of Carlos Hidalgo, but both drivers there deserving their podium positions. Yunya Honma finishing P4, the Japanese driver there on his debut. What a drive from him in the Ford GT, in the fact, taking that fourth place spot and really keeping the Porsches honest all the way through. Ahead of John Shamblin, a stalwart of what is a mainstay of the top split races, and the American driver there with another top 5, and what a drive from him in the number 11 as well. He wasn't quite in the battle as much as he would have liked to have been, but he was all days there and an ever-present threat to pick up the places, and he did so indeed off of Giovanni Lopez, who slowed down right towards the end, costing the places and saw him finish P6 of Rincon Racing. Antonio Montero took P7 ahead of Balta Fernandez, with the Corvette driver there running a solid race and out-edging his fellow countryman in the Porsche, and we did see then Angel Montoro, or in full, Angel Manuel Montoro finish P9 ahead of Ricardo Agrudo, who completed your top 10. Jonathan Palfreman, the cheerful Canadian, finishing at P11 there, number 21 driver. He's always great to see on the grid, I can tell you that. And today, he may have had a little bit of a backseat role, but still best the rest there ahead of Juanjo Teruel. Todd Allier taking an unfortunate P13. He's had bad luck in week 1 and in week 2, just missing out on some fuel at the end, but his luck will come. There's no doubt about it. We'll see him some later on this season having a good day in the number 5. Pavel Paluk, P14 there ahead of Nick O'Neill, the BMW driver, finishing inside the top 15 right at the close. And it was Joaquin Martins and Matthias Matthew Siegel in the Ferrari, completing your lead lap finishes P17. 2 laps down was Cedric Boisier there, and the Ford GT driver for Cube Racing getting it to the close, despite some early misfortune. Horace Peters Veem finishing P19 there, an unfortunate race from after that huge incident coming through turns 2 and 3, which saw him be the victim of circumstance, and the same for Roberto Farina there, with that huge moment coming out of the pit lane after his pit stop, the spin in the pit lane exit, costing him doing, seeing him retire 10 laps in the end. And we also did see what was Sebastian Lutz finish P12 in the end as classified, and we also had the retirement of Thibaut Bracanier and P22, and not the way we wanted it to go in the number 20. Well, what was in the end 22 starters, ladies and gentlemen, and as classified, a grand total of 19 finishers, of those 17 on the lead lap. And what a race. But that, of course, brings all of our racing action, at least for this top split broadcast, to a close at the Daytona International Speedway. But of course, we do have a whole weekend of Daytona to enjoy. If you are looking to race in the iRacing GT Sprint Series on the officials, then definitely go for it, because Daytona is a very different style of race. It's all about the bigger picture and the fuel, as we've seen today. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for us to wrap up and look ahead to next time. And where are we going next time, I hear you ask? Well, we're off to Japan for week number 3. It will be the Suzuka Grand Prix circuit that plays host, and indeed, we will be back on Friday the 4th of April 2025 to continue the story of the GT Sprint Series on iRacing, with week 3 of 12 in Season 2 of 2025, seeing us go to the legendary Figure of 8 circuit designed by John Hugenholtz. Who will be the master of Suzuka? Who will reign supreme in Japan? Well, for all that and more, you'll have to tune in a week's time in our regular 1900 GMT or UTC top split slot. But until then, this has been the GT Sprint Series on iRacing. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, as always, ladies and gentlemen, as well as having a great weekend ahead, remember to stay on track. Good night.